Hello and welcome everybody, all of you in this crowded room. I get it, it's almost lunchtime, that's okay, that's okay. My name is Marijn, I'll be talking a little more about myself very soon after the thank you to the sponsors. And I have to say, every time they're great. This time they're great as well, they bring lots of swag. So nice backpacks if you've been up to the 9th floor, signed up for that Cloud Skill Challenge, get a nice shirt. I saw those blue Azure jackets, they were pretty nice as well. So good swag this year. So thank you to the sponsors for the swag. I mean for sponsoring as well, yes. That's me, I am not a panelist, I was a panelist yesterday, yeah. I'm from Belgium. I've been an Office Apps and Services MVP for a few years now, and I mainly do what I call productivity coaching for companies, which is mainly stuff to do around adoption and just best practices around things. If you have heard about me, it's probably because of this little podcast that I do together with Steve Dalby, called Office 365 Distilled, where we are talking about something in Office 365, mostly governance or adoption related. And then we always end with a whiskey tasting, because we just like whiskey. Some people have said that we should do the whiskey tasting before we talk about technology. That made it more interesting. We've tried that a few times. It didn't go very well, so nope, not doing that again. All right, so I have tons and tons and tons of slides, but don't worry, most of them will just be for structure. What am I going to talk about today? First, I want to start off with the Mocha framework. I don't know if you know about the Mocha framework. Not really? Okay, that's cool. Policies and settings that we can do, how to make meetings great again. Let's walk through some scenarios. And I also want to end with something that I think is super, super, super interesting, but that not a lot of organizations are doing, is to actually track your meeting culture. And we can do that with workplace analytics. So that is really super cool. Anyway, first of all, yesterday I was going to bed pretty early and I was working on my slides. Hey, Phil. And I was working on my slides and I saw something in my RSS feed coming through from Swoop Analytics. And they just brought out a new analysis just yesterday. And one of the things that they were analyzing was time spent in meetings. So are we really spending that much time in meetings? And what they actually saw in their analysis was that just 10% of the staff in an organization are actually responsible for over 40% of all the meetings, of all the time in meetings spent. And that about 50% of the staff would only contribute to about 6% of the meetings. So if we are talking about people that are really busy in meetings, it's actually, most of the time will just be like a fraction of the people that we need to target for that. So I definitely wanted to put that in here just for some context as well, because I think it's a pretty spectacular finding that they did. I need to check with my customers if that's actually the case, because I don't feel like that this is right. So yeah, I really want to double check on that. Now, the Mocha framework. Mocha framework is something that I really like and that I use a lot with my customers. It's actually Microsoft's way of explaining which tool you want to use when. So there's a free presentation that you can download if you search for Mocha. They've got a Power App even, where you can say, okay, this is my scenario, and then it will say, okay, you need to use this application. They've got a really nice PowerPoint for this as well. Starting from the individual person, needs to do a bunch of tasks, needs to do a bunch of work-life balancing acts, and there are a number of applications for that. That person works in a team, and within that team we need to do some things team-based, works in an organization, has a manager, has upper management, and might also take part in some community events. So this is very short Mocha breakdown. Now, if we add some extra people, because the Mocha framework really starts from just you as an organization, and it doesn't really account for all the external parties that we work with. So for me, I'm a consultant, so I almost do 100% of my work is all with customers or partners, suppliers, external consultants, whatever. So I'm always working with external people. Also, if you are working within a organization, you will probably have a manager, unless you're the CEO. But the reason why I wanted to add the Mocha framework is that we can actually track or add a bunch of meeting scenarios based on how we work within an organization. So, for example, if I'm working in a team, we might have daily stand-up meetings. We might have project update meetings like steering committees and stuff like that. We might do workshops if we want to deep dive into certain things. With my manager, I will probably have regular one-on-ones. Maybe from my organization, we would like to organize some town hall meetings or all-hands meetings. Where the CEO or the whatever kind of manager talks to everyone in the organization about the future and how we're doing. And we also might have some community meetups, like if we're taking part in a community. So those are a bunch of meeting scenarios that might happen when you work in an organization. Now, if you want to organize a Teams meeting, let's say that over the last few years, we had a few opportunities to get it right, with everybody starting to work from home, now everybody going back to the office. So there are a bunch of things and policies and settings that you can do and that you can take care of. So very briefly, what are the options to set up a meeting? We've got the Meet Now functionality in Teams. We can create an Outlook meeting, a meeting within a channel, a webinar, or even a live event. And if we take a look at the policies and the settings that we can set around that, so we've got two ways of doing that. So on the one hand, we can do that tenant-wide, so for the whole organization. Those are the Teams admin settings and policies. There we can do things like, do we want to allow audio, video, recording, how long do we want to keep the recording, what do we want to do with automatic transcription, content sharing, who can share content, what do we want to do with guests and participants. And then on the other hand, also per meeting, you can also set a number of extra settings. Now, there are a few, if you do this company-wide or tenant-wide, there are a few of two very distinct implementation types of policy. So on the one hand, you can set something up per organizer, for example, automatically admitting people into the meeting, so without having to wait into the lobby, or allow video. On the other hand, you could also set policies per user, for example, allowing them to create Meet Nows. And on the third side, you can also have per organizer and per user, for example, allow cloud recording, so allow Office 365 to record your meetings. Now, why is this important? Well, for some of my customers, we've actually set up a low bandwidth policy. We've done that for a number of people having to work from home and don't have a really good internet connection. So what we've done for them, for example, was we created a custom policy called limited bandwidth. We disabled audio and video, so we disabled the cloud recording, we disabled the video, we disabled screen sharing, whiteboard, and the shared notes, and then we also added users to the policy that were having this, so every time they would create a meeting, this would happen for them. So that at least they would have like a good meeting experience even with their small broadband or low bandwidth capability. So, something that you've probably seen, because I'm guessing you all have Teams meetings multiple times every day, something that you probably have seen now is that when you record a meeting, that it will now say something like, this meeting will self-destruct in 60 days. So that is something that was added a few months ago, or last year somewhere. And that is something that you can change within your organization. So if you want to change this into after 1 week or after 2 years, 5 years, you can actually do that. There's a setting that you can set up for that. A second tip is to customize your meeting invites. So I still get sometimes meeting invites from other companies where they don't have a logo or a help URL or whatever. And from an accessibility standpoint, that might be very important to get that right. I also like to see who I'm getting invites from. Also, as I said, I'm a consultant. I've got 6 email clients, and adding a logo really helps me to see if I'm creating this meeting from the right account. So sometimes I'm working for a customer, I want to make a meeting for that customer, and then I'll just click on create a meeting and I'll see my own logo there. So I know, okay, no, I should do that from my customer's Outlook account. So that helps me a lot. Now, we have something called the Great Return. So we've all been working from home for a few years. Now we need to go back to the office. So how do we deal with those two big parts? So people who are working from home versus people who are working in the office. How can we make sure that if people are sitting in a meeting room and people who are watching from home, but that the people watching from home don't feel left out? I had that last week when I was working from home, and there were 2 people in a meeting, and we were talking about some problem that they were having, and then the one person would just pick their laptop and say, see, I've got this problem. And that's very cool, but I couldn't see what they were showing, so I was left out for that. So how can we make sure that we don't do that? So same thing for traveling. So these days it's kind of normal for people to work wherever they are, which also means while traveling. I've done that a few times as well when I had to bring my daughter to ballet class and I had to drive back, and I had 20 minutes in the car, so I would just be in the meeting while I'm in the car, which is great if it's just a talk or just some brainstorming. But if somebody's showing something on their screen, I'm left out because I'm traveling. So those are things that you need to take into account. Now, if we're talking about the Great Return, I don't know what the experience is for you, but there are a few, let's say, thought leaders or organizations that have specific views on that. So Microsoft, for a number of years, have already said, we don't care where you're working. If you want to come to the office, you're more than welcome. We will have good coffee for you, and we will have nice meeting rooms. If you want to work from home, we don't care, just as long as the work gets done. Elon Musk, who I have always seen as very outward thinking, very forward thinking, future vision, actually last week or 2 weeks said, I think in a tweet even, like, yeah, it's been all fun and games, but now please come back to the office full time, because we can't build rockets or we can't build the next Tesla car if you're all drinking coffee at home. We need you to be here in the office. What my customers are saying, work from home, come back to the office 2 or 3 days in a week. And I think that's kind of fair. So working from home has benefits. Being in the office, of course, also has lots of benefits. Now, if we talk about meetings, that is difficult if you want to create a meeting and you don't know who is going to be there actually in the office or who is going to be at home. So do I need to book a meeting room for 12 people, 15 people, 2 people, or can I stay at home as well? Thankfully, Microsoft, is going to do something about that, and that is changing how we can RSVP into meetings. So instead of saying, yes, I will attend, you will now, later, be able to say, yes, I will be there in person, or I will attend virtually. I have a customer in the Netherlands, and they had this problem just last week. It's a company that that works with external experts around environmental issues. And for every project that they do, it's a government company. For every project that they do, they would have 2 meetings, normally in the office, of course with COVID, all virtual. And now that everybody's going back to the office, they can choose. So we have one guy coming from all the way from an outskirts from the Netherlands. He had to travel 2 hours to get into our main office in Utrecht, in the center of the Netherlands, just to find out that he was the only one there. Everyone else was just working from home. So the only thing we could do was give him a coffee, give him a cookie, and sit him in one of our meeting rooms where he could follow the whole thing virtually as well. So he's just lost 4 hours of work just because he thought everybody was going to be there and everybody was going to be virtual. So this will definitely help in a lot of those scenarios. So you should also look at the formality level within organizations. So because I'm working with a bunch of organizations, I always see different things. For some customers, everybody always has their webcam on. For other customers, nobody has it on. And I'm the only one because I always have it on, because I invested a lot in a nice background and good lighting, so it needs to pay itself back. So I always have my camera on. Do you want to use the raise hand feature, or is everybody just talking to each other and just asking questions? What's the dress code? I know that you probably know Louise Freze, maybe you don't. She's always talking about working in her pajamas. That's fine, but maybe... I also noticed this because before the corona hit, I was always in a nice suit, going to my customers, and as soon as I was working from home, I was just wearing speaker shirts that were like 8 years old. And it really took quite some time to get that into my head that, no, I'm still working for my customers. They can still see me. I still have to look properly dressed. So what about background blur? What about our company-approved meeting background images? Because that's also something that we saw. Microsoft brought out those Teams background images that you could set for yourself. So everybody was doing pictures of their dogs and their cats and whatever. Now, if we want to be like properly standing in front of our customers, do we want to have these company-approved meeting background images as well? So things that you need to take a look at, like as a company, how do we want to move forward with this meeting culture? Oh yeah, so there's a picture of that as well. So make meetings great again. So I'm pretty sure you will all remember that before the corona hit, we had these meetings for a 1-hour meeting presentation with 200 slides with lots of text, and I will read everything out word for word. So I really hope that we don't have that anymore. So we want to make meetings great again. So I'm just going to give you a bunch of tips to make your meetings be worthwhile again. So before the meeting starts, the first thing you have to ask yourself, could this meeting be an email? Do we actually have to have a meeting? Because we're always having meetings from the morning to the evening. So could this meeting be an email? If it really needs to be an email, okay, cool. Then what we can do, for example, is, I don't know if you've already set this in your own Outlook, is that make every Outlook meeting a Teams meeting by default. I know a lot of customers have actually make sure that everybody in your organization has that. So that's definitely a good one. Also, the other one on this screen is something that not everybody uses, but I think is super valuable, definitely in the Corona pandemic time or when people are working from home is to make sure that your meetings end a little shorter. Because I've got meetings from 9 to 10, from 10 to 11, from 11 to 12. I don't have time to go to the bathroom. I don't have time to grab a coffee. So if you do this, end meetings 5 minutes or 10 minutes earlier, everybody has time to actually do something. We also had that before Corona, when we would have to go into a meeting room, and then we would have a meeting after that. So we had to travel, we had to walk around, maybe to another building, in order to be in the other meeting. And everybody was always 5 or 10 minutes late because they had to come from another building, they had to walk for 5 minutes in between meetings. So this is actually the same thing, so give people the courtesy to do something like that. Now, I was just talking about Louisa, taking her as an example. She actually said this yesterday, and it really struck a nerve with me. She said, no agenda, no attenda. So make sure you've got a meeting agenda if you create a meeting. So make sure that everybody knows what you will be talking about, what is expected from them, and should they actually be there? Or should they actually give that meeting to somebody else, or just give their input on email or something else? So make sure you've got a meeting agenda. Now, next thing that you need to do if you're going to create a meeting is find the best meeting time. So you've got your scheduling assistant, you could use Find Time. One of the new things that's just being released right now is the Bookings with Me functionality. I don't know if you've ever used Bookings. I actually used it for my girlfriend's work. She works with elderly people with Alzheimer. In the Corona pandemic time, they would only have like 2 meeting rooms where people could visit their grandparents and stuff like that. So we actually used Bookings so that people could book a meeting room with that person in a slot. Now, there's a new functionality rolling out right now. It's called Bookings with Me, so people can actually book a meeting with you on a certain time slot. So that's very cool. Also, when is a good time to meet? When is a good time to have a conversation? We're bringing kids to school these days. Some people have an after-lunch dip, so is it really a good idea to have this important workshop at 1 o'clock after lunch? Maybe not. What about free days or meeting-free days, like no meeting Fridays? I know a few organizations have set something up like that, like a no meeting Friday, no meeting Monday. So you need to be aware of that as well. So I also love that picture of that battleship where they say, look, is this slot, will this work for you? Yes. So I wanted to add that as well. Now, something that I just sent to Rob this morning as well, thank you, Rob, for being here, is for people who are creating lots of meetings with lots of people. So if you create a meeting, you send an invite, you will get 20 responses back. Now, what this actually does is that you can say, if people are just accepting the meeting and they don't write anything else in the meeting, I don't want to get that email. I wanted to update my tracking information so that I can see who is coming or who is not coming, but I don't want to get all those emails. Because every time that email comes in, every time you get this little bling, you're distracted. So with this, you can actually turn that off. So I think that's a very helpful one that I just learned about a few weeks ago. So then you've got your meeting, and there are a bunch of meeting options that you can set. Like, do you want to have a lobby? Do you want people to come into your meeting and have to wait in a lobby? Or can they already come in and talk to each other? Yeah. Do we want to have a chat functionality, or do we want to disable that? What kind of applications do we want to add to our meeting? Do we want to have like forms? Do we want to have a whiteboard? Do we want to have something else? Are we going to use a together mode? Together mode is one of those functionalities that should reduce your cognitive load by showing everyone in the same room. What are presentations that we're going to have? Are we going to use PowerPoint Live? If it's just going to be a PowerPoint, do we want to do something else? Do I need to change from one application to the other? Do we want to use breakout rooms? Do we want to lock our meeting so that people can't come in after a certain time? And who can actually start the meeting? If I'm the organizer of the meeting, I'm a bit late. Is it okay if somebody else from my organization already starts the meeting so that they can already start meeting? So those are things that you need to think about if you are setting up your meeting. Setting up your meeting apps, I don't know if you've already done something like this, like for example, setting up forms in your meeting. You can just do that by adding an extra tab in there, asking the questions, setting up the answers, and then while you have the meeting, you can actually launch the poll and everybody will see that popping up on their screen. So that was before our meeting. Now we are actually going to have our meeting. So the first one is try to be on time. So that also jumps back to the other tip that I gave you about ending meetings earlier so that you can make sure that everybody is there on time. A tip that I got from somebody else was spend the first few minutes just talking about off-topic things. That is something that we've all done when we were, before Corona, all working in the office. We would walk in, oh, John, long time no see, how are the kids, blah, blah, blah. Just a few minutes. We've all done that anyway while everybody was walking in. So it's always a good thing to do that here as well so that we just ease the tension, we feel more grounded, we just get that off our chest, these things, so, and also feel more connected. Next tip shouldn't be a surprise. Try to bring out the best in you. I still have so many people that I'm meeting that really want to go the extra mile and put on their camera, but the image is very bad. Or people who are meeting with their phone and they're actually meeting like this, so I'm actually counting their nose hairs. So that's, it's not always that good. Same thing with audio material. Like microphones, invest in a microphone. Don't just use the microphone from your laptop. It's just not that good. It's not that expensive anymore these days. Probably if you talk to some of the vendors and if you don't have like a proper headset, probably one of those vendors will probably have one for you as well if you don't want to spend any money. And then, of course, use the proper tools for the kind of meeting that you're having. If you're having a workshop, try to add a whiteboard, for example. If you're having a webinar, try to add forms, a poll for the meeting. Also, a tip that I want to give you, and it's a tip that I'm trying to give to everyone that I talk to when it comes to meetings and presenting, is try to use PowerPoint Live instead of just sharing your screen. If you're sharing your screen, that actually means that every pixel on your screen is being transmitted to everyone. And if you have a large meeting or a long meeting, that will result in a lot of bandwidth traffic, especially if you're all working in the same building and everybody's following it on their own laptop. That will give you lots of network traffic within the building itself. So if you're just sharing if it's just a PowerPoint that you're doing, try to present it with PowerPoint Live, so that will only stream the PowerPoint itself to everyone, so drastically reducing your network bandwidth. So very important one to do. Now, after the meeting, of course, and I know that this is super boring and nobody wants to do this, it's just like writing comments when you're coding. Nobody wants to do that. It's like creating documentation after you build something. Nobody wants to do it. Same thing with meeting notes. Nobody wants to do it. But please, please, please try to make some good meeting notes afterwards. What I really recommend to do is use a template for this. So you can have templates in OneNote, for example. and really try to do it that way. It will make it easier for you to write them. It will make it easier for everyone else to read them. This is just something that I pulled from Google, or Bing, I should say, sorry. No, it was Google. But you can find your own, maybe add some colors for your own company or whatever. But this will make it so much easier to write your meeting notes. And yeah, it's just really useful for people who couldn't be in the meeting, for example. They could watch or rewatch the meeting if it's recorded, but this will just save so much time. All right, let's talk about some meeting scenarios. So one of the meeting scenarios that we touched on earlier when I was talking about the Mocha framework was our Scrum daily stand-up meeting. So how could we do that within our organization? It could be a recurring channel meeting, for example. So we might have a channel called Scrum for a project, and that could be a recurring channel meeting. We would have it full collaboration. Everybody could do whatever they want on there. We don't want to record it because it's just a short meeting every day. We might want to have a planner board in the channel as well, so that we can all look at the tasks that we need to do. Now, if you are going to do recurring meetings in Teams, be very aware of this thing. Don't cancel a recurring meeting in Teams, because if you do, it will just delete all the meetings that you've ever had. It will also delete the chat. It will delete everything that's linked to it. So a better way to do it is to actually go in there, change the meeting series, and just set the end date to the last meeting that you had, so that you still have the chat, if that's important, if that's being used. So that's a very important or a very good tip if you want to do recurring meetings.
I learned that the hard way.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Is this something they are going to keep?
Yeah, it's a feature. It's not a bug. Yeah. No. No, I've got no idea. I've got no idea. No. Yeah.
There's loads of weird and wonderfuls when it comes to meetings and Teams.
There's a lot of weird stuff happening with meetings in Teams. That is very true. Yeah. All right. Oh, sorry. Yeah. People want to take a picture. Good. All right. So next scenario might be a steering committee. So you need to present the status of your project to a bunch of important people that make much more money than I do. So that might be an Outlook meeting. You really want to have like a proper meeting agenda for these things. You might even want to record these, make these available afterwards, but then you need to make sure, like, if I'm going to create those from my own account, those will be saved in my OneDrive. Do I want to keep it in the OneDrive? Do I want to move it into the project folder or something like that? How long do I want to keep this one? Do I want to keep this until we've got the next meeting, so that people can rewatch the last meeting? Alternatively, use a channel meeting to have all the recordings there if you want to. Now, the next scenario might be a workshop. Now, I'm always in favor of just doing these in person, because for me personally, I always like to draw on a whiteboard, and I just don't feel personally that the Teams whiteboard is there yet. I know they're working on it. They just released a bunch of features over the last few months, but for me, it just doesn't work that way. I'm always someone that walks around in meetings and draws on whiteboards all the time. So I feel like workshops, even definitely when it's with customers, I always try to do those in person. Definitely now, after the pandemic, I know we've got monkeypox coming, but that's far in the future. But yeah, so that's what I try to do. The one-on-one reviews with the boss man, I try to keep those as Outlook meetings as well, where you can share, where you can present. Maybe you want to have your Viva Insights there as well. where you can actually say, this is how I work, these are my working hours, this is how I try to book focus time for myself, things like that, to make sure that you can show to your boss how you like to work. Yeah? Of course, you want to turn on your webcam if it's not a face-to-face meeting. You don't want to record these things because they, of course, contain sensitive material, and you might even want to close the meeting if it's really confidential and you feel like somebody might jump in. Now, on the other hand, we, for example, have a community meetup. So I know for larger organizations, they've got tons of communities going on. So smaller organizations might have like a mountain bike club or a soccer club or whatever. But larger organizations might have large community meetups. Those will typically be like a webinar. Might even be a live event, but most of the time it will be like a webinar. Do you want to have some kind of registration? Do you want to ask a number of things to the people? You probably want to have like attendees and presenters separated, where the attendees can't have video or probably on mute, but might want to have a chat open. And you might want to promote a certain attendee to a presenter if they really want to ask a question, something like that. You might want to get some sentiment analysis done on that as well. You might want to ask some questions in a poll.
One of the things we do, Marijn, which we started doing with the Luton's group, is that we do a present for a community thing. We do a presentation for 20 minutes, and then we split everybody out into breakout rooms. So that way everybody gets a bit of a conversation, get a conversation going. We give them a couple of icebreaker questions, and it's really working really well. That's just a
Yeah. So for the people who are watching at home, so really good comment from Phil, trying to do like shorter meetups and break up the meeting or the community meetup in small breakup rooms? No, breakout rooms, that's it. Not breakup rooms. So that would be horrible. No, it could be useful, yes. Breakout rooms so that they can also all talk to each other and everybody can say something. And yeah, I think that's actually a good idea as well. Yeah. Cool. Something that I also played with and that I also think is pretty fascinating is the functionality to create your own meeting room. I know we've all... a lot of people have done that with the Muppets, where you have those people on the wall or in a Star Wars image or whatever. But you can also do that if your your physical meeting rooms have like a really proper look. So I've got a few customers, and a few years ago, they really spend a lot of money in how the interior design was for that company. So they bought all kinds of very fancy furniture and stuff like that. So we actually created a together mode to show people sitting there. And now there's a functionality, I think it's rolling out, or it was announced that it's gonna roll out, where you can actually say, okay, this is together mode, because the together mode is just for you. I want to show this together mode to everyone in the meeting, so that everyone has the same experience. I don't know if it's rolling out or if it's in preview. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. In a few weeks it will probably be there. So that's definitely something how you can bring people together as well. You might also have a company town hall meeting. So depending on how large your organization is, I've got a customer that has around 60 people. They're just doing it in a weekly meeting where they just have everyone on there for 30 minutes. They record it so that you can watch it later if you weren't there. But I also have organizations that have a few 10,000s of people worldwide, where they probably want to do something better like this. Microsoft actually has a monthly, I think, meeting where the CEO is doing some Q&A and some talk about around how they work and where they go to. That is a very specific case because they've got 100,000 people worldwide or something. But they actually wrote it down, so there's a document or a presentation that you can download or a playbook around how they have done that. But that's with producers and video people and audio people and a bunch of things, and there's a lot of steps involved in that. But that's really like a professional way to set that all up. But if you're interested, or if you have like a large company and you want to do something like that as well, it might be useful. There are some really good tips and tricks in that document. Yeah, allow the engagement report. That's also a nice one that you can set up as well. Accessibility. Accessibility has been very important here at Scottish Summit, so we've got these wonderful people here as well helping us out. Thank you for that, by the way. So when you are doing meetings, try to keep that in mind as well. So, for example, if you invite people, don't just use a picture in your email with all the information on, because if somebody has visual impairment, they will not see it, and the reading material that they're using will not pick up what the text is on the image. So that might be something that you want to use. Use alt text. I know that this is something that we needed to do for our presentations as well. I know Jesper, for example, has spent a lot of time making sure that he's got good alt text in his session. Use inclusive language, not the typical "hey guys," but "hi everyone." It's always better. Video content has subtitles. That's something I haven't done, but I'm reading the text on my slides anyway, so that's okay. Use captioning, and think about using a sign language interpreter if you have like these town hall meetings for a bunch of people. That might be a very good way to be all-inclusive. There's a link to a Sway from Microsoft there that gives you much more information on how to set up accessible meetings. Now, the last part of the session is around workplace analytics. And this is something that I've only learned like a few months ago. And this has been a real game changer for some of my customers, because there are some extra licenses involved. Not everybody wants to set it up, but it can really track how you work in your organization. So this is not really part of the Viva thing, Viva Insights. It will be, of course, after some time. It's now still called Workplace Analytics. And what it can do is it can track how your organization does meetings. That's one of the things that it can track. So, for example, in this case, and these are slides coming, images coming from Microsoft. So, in this case, they're saying we've got total cost of low quality meetings, and that's 120 million, I guess, or something like that. So yeah, that's a Microsoft slide. Maybe it will be slightly less in your organization. But what I really love about this one, and I'm going to give you some examples of what it is tracking. For example, low quality meeting hours. What are low quality meeting hours? This is kind of like an umbrella category that looks at should you be in the meeting? Are you not a redundant person in the meeting? Maybe there are multiple layers of management in the meeting. Maybe that's not necessary. Maybe if you're a, I don't know, SharePoint consultant and there are 3 other SharePoint consultants in the meeting as well, maybe you shouldn't have 4 of those same people in the meeting. Maybe 1 is good enough. The other one that is being tracked is, for example, what are people doing while they are in the meeting? Are they actually writing emails while they're in the meeting? So that is being tracked because we've got graph technology behind it, which actually tracks everything that you do. And if it says, oh, you're actually in a meeting right now, but I also see you writing emails, so maybe you're not very involved in that meeting. Maybe you shouldn't be in that meeting if you're actually working. So this is, as I said, the umbrella category of low quality meeting hours. Now, why is this metric important? Why do we want to capture this? Because it's definitely a good indicator of how your meeting culture is. So it will help you make meetings more efficient. If you're multitasking, that will of course reduce productivity, because multitasking is a myth, just like the Loch Ness Monster. It's a myth, so it's not a real thing. And if you're doing email multitasking, it means that you only hear part of the conversation, you're not contributing to your full potential, and you might fail to know what needs to happen afterwards. Another thing that is being tracked is how many hours and how many attendees do we have in a meeting. So this is important because it's not always bad to have a large meeting, but if you have a lot of people in the meeting, it might be difficult to reach a decision. If we have 20 people in the meeting, not everybody, well, it's going to be difficult to reach that decision. Most of the time, a large group of the people will not be there for all those topics that you want to discuss in the meeting. So they are just disengaged, and they will start doing other things, and then they will forget to notice when their topic is on. It might also lead to just bad company culture. So if people feel like they have to be in the meeting, so when meeting attendance is more important, then yeah, you will have overly large meetings, which is not a good thing. So there's this thing called an 8-18-1800 rule, saying decision making up to 8 people in the meeting, brainstorms up to 18 people, and international meetings 1800 or more. Another metric being tracked is duration of meeting hours. So how many meetings do you have that are longer than 1 hour? Because I don't know about you, and I know we've reached almost the 50 minutes of the session, but I don't know about you, but after 50 minutes, I'm kind of done for and I need a break. Not only a bathroom break or a coffee break, but it's also lunchtime, so I'm getting hungry, so yeah, I want to do something else. But it's not always bad to have a long meeting. For example, when you really want to drill down into a problem, or you have like a proper workshop where you want to talk through things, you could have a meeting that is 2 or 3 hours, because that might be the time that you need for that. But it could also indicate that your meeting lacks direction or focus, that you have not structured your meetings in an efficient way, so that you might probably have not created a meeting agenda, for example, so that you're not following that agenda. So difficult to retain focus, of course, and suggest poor meeting planning. Redundant meeting hours, so where people are, so the same people are in the same meeting, or multiple layers of management are in the same meeting. That gives you the opportunity to downsize those meetings. Lower level employees could feel less empowered. If there are 5 of the same type of people in there, they will just say, like, why am I here? My attendance is not very valuable here, because they felt the need to ask for more of those people that do the same thing as me. So that's not, yeah, I'm not empowered for this. And senior level managers might be better off by delegating that to other people as well. And then you've got the multitasking meeting hours, so where people are actually doing other things. So that might indicate that your employees are overloaded, that they feel the need to still be working while they should be paying attention to the meeting. So that means they've got too much to do. They're not engaged in the meeting, so that means they shouldn't be there anyway, because if you're just there for shits and giggles, then maybe you shouldn't be there. Also, if you've got a manager or a project leader that is doing that during the meeting, that might give a signal to the other people in the meeting or to the other employees underneath the manager that it's okay to do that, or that it might even be like a required thing to do, or like that we want you to do that. So that can lead to that being the norm in the organization, so leading to less effective meetings. Conflicting meeting hours is also one of those things, so where people actually have multiple meetings going on at the same time that they accepted. So, yeah, of course, then you can't fully commit to that meeting. Maybe they'll just go there for one point or one meeting point of the 5 meeting points that you want to address in the meeting, and then they'll jump to the other meeting, and that is, yeah, on the one hand, stressy and overburdening for those people, but they will also not be fully committed during the meeting as well. So if you have managers that do that a lot, they might say that the one-on-one meetings might be less important, so they might schedule it next week and the next week and the next week instead of doing them now. And that's critical for your employees, because if they always get moved back, then that might lead to disengagement for your employees as well. Now, wrapping up, because it's time and I'm hungry and I'm sure you are all hungry as well. If you got different meeting scenarios, it will require different ways of working, different setups. So analyze what you need, act accordingly, get proper tools for your people as well. I know we had Christmas half a year ago, but that was the perfect time to give everyone in your organization like a proper headset or proper video camera, for example. Communicate your policies and track your meeting culture. I think that's very, very, very important. And that can really be an eye-opener if you go into that workplace analytics mode. That can really bring out some unexpected results and can lead you to make a better company or a better organization. So with that, I want to thank the sponsors again. So be sure to visit them, get some swag. I know some people have weird things. I don't know who was at the party from Incremental yesterday. That was a good party. We had lots of beers. Lots of beers. So that was good as well. So definitely, yeah, go visit them. And with that, I want to thank you. And I'll be here for a few more hours. So if you have any questions, then feel free to come talk to me. Thank you.